All right, we are going to get started here. So today we're going to talk about the changing COVID-19 and the impact on your life. For those of you who are new to the presentation, my name is Dr. V and Balda Crowder, and I'm an emergency medicine physician. I've been an emergency medicine physician for 30 years. This is my fourth pandemic. And the information for this presentation is on my website, AskDrV.us. All of the resources, all the literature. One of the things that we're going to add tomorrow to the website, which is going to be really good, as I started reading it today, was all the CEOs of the major pharmaceutical companies gave testimony to Congress. So their written testimony, it will be on the website probably by tomorrow afternoon. You can also tweet at me at AskDr_V. All right, so the structure is 10 to 15 minute presentation, then followed by Q&A. We usually end right at about 9 o'clock. Sometimes we end a little bit earlier, depends upon the number of questions that we have. We take written questions first. So anyone that types a question in the Q&A or types a question in the chat box, those are the questions that we go to first. During the presentation, everyone will be in listen mode. And then after we answer all the questions that are written, we can sometimes take people individually off of mute to actually ask their question live. So feel free to type in your questions as we go. All right, the intention of this webinar is to keep everyone informed on COVID-19 families so that they will keep themselves and their families safe. The outcome is that they'll leave the webinar and they'll be motivated to create an action plan. And you will adjust your action plan from time to time as things happen and new information occurs. Some people may also be creating an action plan for a broader community, a homeowners association group, a condo building, a union, etc. All right, after 99 days, 1 million Americans became infected with COVID-19. It took just 43 days after that for the United States to reach 2 million. 28 days later, we reached 3 million cases of COVID-19. And 2 weeks later, which was today, we actually crossed the 4 millionth mark. So we now have more than 4 million cases of COVID-19 in the United States. As you can see from this timeline, we're actually adding 1 million cases faster and faster and faster. So this is really something that everyone should be paying attention to. Now, I'm going to just go over a little bit for those who haven't been on this presentation before. This is a droplet disease. We tell everybody to respect COVID-19. There is also some airborne component. It does stay on surfaces for long periods of time, cardboard surfaces for 24 hours, plastic surfaces for 96 hours. Highly contagious. COVID-19, minimum time of exposure to infect others is 45 seconds. When you actually look at how many people get infected when 100 of them have become exposed to COVID-19, it's about 60 to 80%. I apologize for my dog in the background. Let's just talk first about droplet versus airborne. Droplets are larger particles, and they usually fall within 3 feet. That's why we had the initial recommendation to only stay 3 feet away from people. What we have found is that COVID-19 transports not only as a droplet, but it also transports as a smaller particle, which is airborne and can travel long distances. So I just show here an example. Ebola is a droplet disease. It's very big, very heavy, falls within 3 feet. Measles actually spreads out into the air and is an airborne disease. So we're not sure if COVID-19 is actually spreading by micro droplets or if it becomes aerosolized and becomes airborne because of heavy breathing or certain actions. We do know that certain things actually lead this particular particle to stay in the air longer. So exercise, singing, blowing through instruments, those sorts of things. This is one of the reasons why I also put in this slide to actually make sure that people do not use their nebulizers at home if they have asthma. You cannot tell the difference between COVID-19 and an asthma attack because it can present very similarly with coughing or shortness of breath or wheezing. And if you are COVID-19 positive and you use a nebulizer, then you have definitely made it airborne throughout the home. So if you live with other people, it will more easily infect other people. So we recommend that people actually use their inhaler with a spacer. The device here to the right is a spacer. And that spacer then can deliver the same amount of medication as a nebulizer machine. So the CDC says US could get control of coronavirus if everyone wore a mask for 1 to 2 months. So we're going to use this particular presentation today to really do a deep dive on masks, because I get a lot of questions about the mask. So first thing is this gentleman here. His name is, whoops, sorry about that. His name is Peter Tsai, and he is the inventor of the N95 mask. And what I want to do here is just play a little video of him. It's very short. It's only about 2 minutes. And hold on just a second. He basically came out of retirement, and he talks a little bit about how he invented, oh gosh, maybe this is not going to work. Hold on just a second. All right, let's see here.
I will regret it in the rest of my life, because people are dying. I grew up in Taiwan.
We're having a problem with sound, so I'm not going to actually, what I'll do is I'll put this actually on the website. But basically, he's from Taiwan. He actually came to the US to get his PhD, and he actually developed the electromagnetic film that is on the outside of the mask that actually allow for particles to attach to it. So what I'll do is I'll put this, he talks about coming to the US and deciding to go to college in the US, and when he began actually looking at this. He never had actually considered looking at this for medical use. He was really only looking at it from an industrial perspective, sort of people work in dusty work environments. So I will add this link to the website. I thought we could possibly show it. So basically, he talks about this electrostatically charged fabric that he had invented, and that is what actually attracts like magnet particles to the outside of the mask. And this is why it's so important when we actually talk about masks that people don't touch the outside of their mask. Right, his recommendation is to get 7 N95 or KN95, or you could also get an N99 mask, whichever one you decide to get. We'll talk about the difference in a little bit. But get 7 of them, use 1 of them for each day of the week, hang them up, let them sit for a week, and then that would be enough time for the virus to be deactivated. And then you use Monday again on the following Monday, you use Tuesdays again on the following Tuesday, etc. So there's basically 4 types of masks. There's, in addition to the just regular homemade mask or surgical mask, N95, KN95, N99s, and P100s. So if you look at it, the N95 masks are actually FDA approved, and those are masks that are used in the healthcare field. KN95 masks are very similar. They're just what was made in China, and they're not FDA approved, but they're very similar. And in China, their KN95 masks are approved to use in a hospital. Then there's N100 mask or P100 mask, which are very, very similar, and they block out basically 99.9% of particles. Anything that's 3 microns or larger. So let's take a look at what these look like. So here are the N95 masks. They're different. They don't all look like this, but this is what some of them look like. Again, they come in different sizes and shapes. You're usually fit tested for them. This is what an N99 respirator mask looks like. You've seen some of these worn on, you maybe have seen reporters or someone wearing these. This is an N100 mask. These are the P100 respiratory masks. Right, I have one of these that I use. I have one that looks a little bit like the one in the middle. All right. So now, how do you properly wear a mask? You want to make sure that you are covering your face from the bridge of your nose all the way down to your chin. It should be loose fitting, but still stay securely in place. You should be able to talk with the mask on, and it shouldn't irritate you, or you don't want to be tempted to kind of touch it or pull it out of place, or you don't want to constantly be moving it. Now, the guidelines to properly wear a mask: you wash your hands. Again, we always touch the mask at the string that is going behind your ear. We do not touch the mask at the outside of the mask, because that is actually where the particles are that are infectious. Right? Make sure the mask fits and covers your nose, mouth, and chin. Make sure you can breathe and talk comfortably. You can wash some reusable masks if you actually want to wash them after each time. If they're disposable, then obviously discard them. Now, things not to do. It's important that you don't touch your mask from the outside. You don't touch other people's masks from the outside. You'll see people in slide 2 where they kind of pull it down underneath their chin. You don't want to do that. You don't want to leave your nose or your mouth uncovered. And you don't want to remove the mask while you're in public. And you also don't want to remove the mask when you sneeze or cough, because that also, that kind of defeats the purpose of the mask. So you want to go ahead and sneeze or cough into the mask. The major points are filtering 100% of the incoming air, layered fabric, proper fit, proper size, facial hair. It's important to have no facial hair because the mask fits better if there's no facial hair. Facial hair also actually accumulates viral particles. So, if at all possible, you want to get rid of any facial hair. You want it to be comfortable and have some sort of metal piece or metal bend around the nose if possible. I got a couple questions last time about face shields and whether or not face shields are as effective as masks. And the answer to that is no. I wasn't sure. I told everybody I use face shields in addition to masks in the hospital setting because we're concerned about splattering. But in Switzerland, they actually did a study and they actually looked at face shields without mask, and they were not very effective at all. And so if you're going to actually use a face shield, you use a face shield in combination with a mask, which is shown here in the photo below. Now, what difference do they make? Well, it depends upon who has the mask on. So out in the normal world, you do not know who has coronavirus and who does not have coronavirus. You don't know if you have coronavirus. So what we did was we did this slide here. On the left-hand side is a person who has COVID-19. On the right-hand side is a healthy person. If the healthy person has on the mask, the transmission probability is 70%. If the coronavirus 19 person has on a mask, the transmission probability is 5%. If both people have on a mask, the transmission probability is 1.5%. So when you wear a mask, you're protecting the other person, and when they wear a mask, they are protecting you. So that is basically how it works with the mask. All right, now, one thing that I wanted to talk about, which we have not had a chance to talk about, and we're starting to see this more and more, are the long-term effects of COVID-19, right? So one of the things that we're seeing is what we call post-intensive care syndrome, and that's where you either have cognitive, mental, or physical impairment. About 75% of COVID-19 patients recovering from the ICU experience post-intensive care syndrome. You also have renal failure, a lot of dialysis, chronic dialysis. Some patients may wind up needing transplants, limb amputations, as we saw with Nick Cordero, the Broadway star who passed, but prior to passing had his limbs amputated as a result of blood clots. Strokes, we're seeing a lot of strokes from the clotting in young and old. About 50% or so of young patients are not able to return to work. And then pulmonary fibrosis and decreased lung capacity. So about a third of the patients are reporting difficulty breathing with normal activity, months after catching COVID-19. Walking a block, house cleaning causes shortness of breath. So this is really, I know there's a lot of focus on how many people have died from the disease, but one of the things that we're going to be taking care of a lot, we're going to have a lot of COVID disabilities moving forward as people get this disease and then don't die, but recuperate with some of these complications. All right, get a lot of questions about vaccines. I want to just a couple of slides on vaccines. These are sort of the phases: exploratory, preclinical, clinical, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, regulatory review by the FDA, manufacturing, quality control, and distribution. So as you can see, there's a lot of different phases to this. And then when you get finally to distribution, usually what happens is they will do distribution with essential workers first, and then do distribution also with people who are at high risk first. So there's about 80 vaccines that are in various levels of development. This month, we haven't added, but this month we had several of the vaccines start in their phase 2. And so when you actually see on the website the CEOs of AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and Moderna speaking before Congress, they actually report in those testimonies the results of their phase 1 and phase 2 studies. So one of the ones that everyone's been looking at is Moderna. They're the ones that Dr. Fauci and NIAID is working with. Again, they were able to really jumpstart this because they had been doing a lot of work with the SARS, for the SARS vaccine, which was SARS and MERS, which is a similar vaccine to COVID-19. This is a 2-part vaccine. You have to get one vaccination, then in 28 days you get another vaccination. They are enrolling in this month. They've started accepting patients. They're enrolling 30,000 volunteers into this particular trial. Alrighty, now let's just talk about indoor spaces, because the fact that this is airborne basically kind of cuts out movie theaters, right? Any place where you sit inside for a long period of time. Cuts out church as well, another place where you sit inside for a long period of time. Gyms. Some people are doing modifications on gyms. I really recommend, and these are some of the modifications that folks are doing. I think it's really just much safer to just, exercise outside, whether or not it's running or jogging or playing tennis or golfing, or anything that you can really find that you can do outside would be much better than being inside of a gym. Office spaces, I really recommend that most people stay out of their office spaces, particularly if their building is a large number of people in a building. They have found coronavirus in air compressors when they're testing air compressors in large buildings that have large amount of people. And so we really do need to telework until we get vaccinated, particularly if you have risk factors. Schools. There's been a lot of talk about school reopening. No schools or no country has reopened any of its schools with the degree and the amount of infection that we have, with the amount of community transmission that we have. The places that have reopened their schools are countries that have actually gotten their transmission rates down significantly through a lockdown, a coordinated nationwide lockdown, universal mask mandates. And then when they have actually gotten the schools back up and running, They've used partitions like you're seeing here. All of the students have on masks. They often set the kids up into various different pods so that there's less interaction, and cut the class size down to about 10 to 15 students. So the American Academy of Pediatrics created a lot of different recommendations as it relates to education, nutrition, special populations, athletics, mental health, group sizes, etc. And basically, I'm not going to go through all of these recommendations, but basically what they're doing is significantly decreasing class sizes, creating hallways so they go in one direction, creating kids into cohorts or pods where they then eat with that same group, go to school with that same group, go to recess with that same group. So there's less people interacting with each other from different pods, and doing things like that. And so that will make sense once we actually get the community transmission right now. So considerations for going back to school is, what's the infection rate in your community? The community that has the highest infection, the highest positivity test rate is Nogales, Arizona. And a COVID test done there, about 55% of them are turning positive. Other places have very high, I think Florida's in the 20s or 30s. So, you want to actually have a test positive rate that is definitely less than 10%. And that's really, really important. You also want to make sure that you have contract tracing in place, and you want to make sure that you're able to get rapid testing. The test where people go get a test, they don't get the results for 7 days. There's very little you can do with that because you can't contract trace. People will not often quarantine if they're not sure that they're positive. The other things to take into consideration are, what is the age of your children? How mature are they? Are they able to really follow instructions and keep a mask on throughout the day? What are the aging conditions of other people that live in the home? Do you have a multi-generational household where you have aunts and uncles and grandparents? And so those are all things that may make you want to consider homeschooling your child. So what countries have done is they've dramatically decreased their community infection rate. That's goal number one when they opened up preschools. They've decreased class sizes, moved desks far apart, removed public water fountains, provided PPE for teachers, administrators, and staff, more frequent cleaning of the rooms, offices, and buses. They've installed more cleaning stations, and they also have done temperature testing of all students and staff on a daily basis, with people being sent home if their temperature is below, if their temperature is above like a 99.5. All right, so this COVID risk test, this COVID risk chart was put together by the Texas Medical Association. This is also on the website. If you want to print it out and have it with you, this kind of goes over common activities that we do and which things are more risky than others. So a 9, which is high risk, is going to a bar, working out at a gym, attending a church service with over 500 worshipers, any sort of large music or sporting event. A 6 is sending your kids to school, daycare, or camp. So that's actually pretty high, as well as working a week in an office building, having dinner at somebody's house, going to a shopping mall. 4 is eating at a restaurant, walking in a busy downtown, grocery shopping. 2 are things like playing tennis, pumping gas, and 1 is like opening up your mail in your home. So this just kind of, this list of activities kind of gives you an idea of what's high risk, what's medium risk, and what's low risk. Now, just a little bit of good news. This is a home COVID test. This is being tested in Australia with very, very good results. And so kind of excited about this. This is almost similar to how you would check your blood sugar at home, right? So it is a home device. That little area there with the blue drop is where you you spit into that. So there's no sticking of any swab up your nose or anything like that. So you spit into that, and then it actually tells you if you're positive or not. They've been using these as a way of where people can kind of do this, and then they show the results before they go into a movie theater or a play or something like that. And this sort of it's a strip, and that strip is then dated with today's date. So those are things we may see in the future as things that may be used while we are trying to get a handle on this infection and get everyone vaccinated. All right. So